We're in the archives at the National Museum of Asian Art to talk about one of the most spectacular objects in the collection, the third oldest copy of the Gospels.
So if we look at this newspaper headline, marvelous story of the discovery of an authentic manuscript of the Bible, the discovery itself took place in December of 1906 when Freer, making his first ever visit to Egypt, traveled to Giza. If you were traveling like Charles Lang Freer in 1906 to Egypt for the first time, and you were curious, as he was, especially about ceramics, you would ask around. You would have your guidebooks. He had a Baedeker's. He stayed at the Shepherd's Hotel, which had within its confines what Freer would have called curio shops or antique shops. There were plenty surrounding the hotel, but another center of the antiquities trade was in Giza, in a small village called Kafr al-Haram. There was a particularly well-known, well-connected dealer named Ali Gabri. So Freer must have been directed to al-Gabri's shop. And in that shop, he happened upon a manuscript that Ali Gabri had been trying to sell for some time. Now, Freer, by his own account, was attracted to the work because of the covers. But he has a problem, which is, what is it, and is it genuine? So he came across and employed two men whom he calls Greek scholars. But after 2 days of careful examination of the manuscript, he's persuaded to buy it. And he does. And one feature of the story, which is quite interesting, is that as enthusiastic as he was, within days of making this purchase, he very quickly has buyer's remorse. So he contacts a scholar named Francis Kelsey, and Kelsey finds a very eager younger scholar named Sanders, who embarks upon years and years of research. And what that research demonstrates is that, in fact, Freer had happened upon a manuscript of exceptional significance.
And this at a moment when this is what Americans and mostly Europeans were doing. They were shopping.
And in fact, part of the reason Freer goes to Egypt in late 1906 and early 1907 is that great American collectors had begun to become active.
There was an international competition.
Right.
When the manuscript is studied, it's discovered that it actually has a passage that is not in the canonical Gospels.
For scholars, it offered a very important early reading, which would transform, or so they hoped, their understanding of Christian origins. But for the public, America is still finding its way as a global power. So whereas in St. Petersburg, they had what we now call the Sinai Codex, in Italy, they had the Vatican Codex. Now, for the first time, America would have its own codex, its own symbol of engagement with an ancient Near East.
We would have demonstrated, thanks to Freer, that we could participate on the global cultural stage. Let's take a look at these photos of Freer in Giza.
So Freer goes to a photographer named Paul Dittrich. And he has at least 2 photos taken. The conceit is that it's an outside cafe.
With the pyramids in the background.
With the pyramids in the background. To the left is Frederick Mann, a close friend of Freer's. To the right is the venerable Ali El-Gabri. The dealer does not speak any English, is part of a family tradition of antiquity sales. Freer and Gabri are shaking hands. And one way to read this is that they have just consummated their deal. The man standing is almost certainly Ibrahim, Ali El-Gabri's son. And whereas Ali El-Gabri, dressed as a traditional Arab, his son, wearing westernized clothes, does the translating, he also represents a modernizing Egypt.
Let's take a look at some of the documents.
And what we're looking at here, contents of 4 cases shipped from Egypt to Mr. Freer. And what this document captures is the shipping instructions that Mr. Freer very carefully gave for 4 cases which were to be shipped from Cairo to Detroit. He had earlier in 1906 formally agreed to give his collection to the United States. His collection at that point was relatively small, just over 2,000 pieces, but it was growing. And when he entered into that agreement, it was to give not only what he then had acquired, but what he would acquire in the future.
It's important to think about this moment at the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century of the opening of public museums, creating collections that would serve to educate a broad public.
When this announcement was made, it was national news. This was the first great gift to the nation, not just of a collection of international standard, but also of the funding necessary to build a museum. We at the museum celebrated our 100th anniversary in 2023. And what we're celebrating was the public opening of the museum in 1923. But the origins of the museum go back to 1906. And what did it say about America in 1906? That its first national museum was given over mainly to the arts and cultures of Asia and the Middle East. This was a moment of internationalism. This was a moment of engagement in which the United States, through this gift, was very proudly saying, we have engaged with Asia and the Middle East. We are acquiring the symbols of cultural power. We have in collectors such as Mr. Freer and others expertise that is the envy of Europe.